All right, let's run through the roadmap real quick. First up, we'll look at friendly fire and international matches. Then, we'll hit some USL Championship heavyweight clashes, followed by USL League One predictions. After that, we're heading overseas for Sweden Cup qualifying battles, and finally, we'll wrap up with a super high-stakes La Liga 2 semi-final.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, Friendly Fire and International Matches.
Let's start by establishing our baseline, right? Like, what exactly does a low-stakes football match look like when we map it out in pure numbers? Well, we're starting with today's international friendly slate. Take a look at these interesting matchups lined up across the globe. We've got Portugal taking on Nigeria, a really compelling England versus Costa Rica fixture, and Bolivia going head-to-head with Algeria. Now, on the surface, these are great matchups, but remember, these are just friendlies. The context is literally everything here.
So let's look at the consolidated betting markets for these matches. Notice the really distinct trends going on here. For heavy attacking teams like England, we're projecting a totally commanding 3-0 or 4-0 victory, with a super high corner count, over 9.5 to be exact. Portugal is also looking at an over 8.5 for corners with a 2-1 or 3-1 win. But, okay, look at that final column. Across the board, we're seeing noticeably low yellow card predictions. Under 3.5 for Portugal and Bolivia's matches, and even lower for England's.
That specific prediction right there, under 2.5 yellow cards for England versus Costa Rica, is entirely driven by behavioral psychology. I mean, think about it. Why so few cards? Well, because this is the very last friendly before a World Cup. Players on both sides are desperately avoiding reckless challenges. There is no way anybody wants to miss the absolute biggest tournament of their lives because of some meaningless tackle in a friendly match, right? The low stakes of the match result in super low aggression, and that perfectly translates to that under 2.5 card stat.
All right, moving on to Section 2, USL Championship, heavyweight clashes.
Now we're going to escalate the stakes a bit and move into the highly competitive domestic leagues. Take a look at this USL Championship slate. We have some absolute heavyweight clashes on the docket today. I want to draw your attention specifically to massive fixtures like the Tampa Bay Rowdies taking on the Charleston Battery, and further down, Phoenix Rising FC going up against Louisville City FC. These aren't friendlies, these are teams battling it out for crucial league positioning.
Here's the data wall for the USL Championship. Now, I want you to immediately notice how the numbers jump up compared to the friendlies we literally just analyzed. The projected scores are super tight, a lot of 1-1, 2-1, and 1-0 predictions. But the corners and the yellow cards, they are totally surging.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the why behind those numbers. For Tampa Bay versus Charleston, we're projecting over 4.5 yellow cards simply because of the intense competitive rivalry between these top teams. And look at Phoenix Rising versus Louisville City. This match has a totally high-stakes knockout and elimination feel to it. That kind of pure desperation directly pushes the corners over 10.5 and the cards over 4.5. Even in the Detroit and Monterey matches, the consistent tactical pressure is projecting really heavy corner counts.
Let's just lock in on that specific number for a second. Over 10.5 corners. That is a staggering projection for both the Tampa Bay and Phoenix matches. Look, when teams are totally evenly matched and absolutely desperate for 3 points, they push wider, they take a lot more shots, and defenders are just constantly forced into making last-ditch clearances. The crazy high intensity of the USL Championship quite literally creates more corners, which makes this a heavily targeted market for bettors today.
Up next is Section 3, USL League One predictions.
Just to make sure we've got totally comprehensive coverage of the American tier today, let's briefly pivot over to League One. Even here, the trend of high domestic stakes completely holds true. Westchester SC versus Fort Wayne projects as a super tight 1-2 finish, while Charlotte Independence versus Union Omaha is deadlocked at a projected 1-1. But despite the low-scoring projections, look at the sustained high output elsewhere. Over 9.5 corners for both and up to over 4.5 yellow cards for that Charlotte match. Tight scores basically mean late-game desperation, and that always equals more fouls and more set pieces.
Okay, let's head to Section 4, Sweden Cup, qualifying battles.
Let's cross the Atlantic now and see how this theory actually holds up in tournament play. Here are the fixtures for the Swedish qualifiers. In these early knockout rounds, we often see a pretty big mismatch in team quality. Today, we're focusing heavily on Falu versus Gefle, and another key matchup, Lidköpings versus Skövde.
Looking at the betting markets here, a really clear pattern emerges. Gefle is stepping in as the heavy favorite against Falu, and the data predicts a super clean, dominant 3-0 victory for them. Similarly, Skövde is projected to win 2-0. Now, the corners remain relatively high, but look at the yellow cards. We are right back down to under 3.5 for both matches.
So why does a tournament knockout game have such low card projections? Well, it's because it's the early qualifying rounds. In these mismatch qualifiers, the favored teams easily control the pace and possession. I mean, when one team is cruising to a 3-0 victory, there's absolutely no need for cynical, desperate tackles from the winning side, right? And honestly, the losing side often kind of accepts the result well before the final whistle. Less desperation basically guarantees under 3.5 yellow cards.
Finally, Section 5. High stakes, La Liga 2 semifinal.
But what happens when you combine the knockout nature of a tournament with two perfectly matched teams fighting for their absolute lives? Well, let's move to the climax of today's explainer over in Spain. The standard Spanish season has completely wrapped up, which leaves us with the sheer drama of the playoffs. This sets the stage beautifully. It's the La Liga 2 semifinal, Malaga taking on Las Palmas. Guys, this isn't about avoiding injury, and it definitely isn't an early round mismatch. This is win or your entire season is over. This is literally the fight for promotion to one of the biggest leagues in the entire world.
The final data set for this matchup paints a really vivid picture. The projected scoreline is incredibly tight, a razor-thin 1-0 victory for Malaga. The corners are looking really healthy at over 8.5. But look at the yellow cards. We are seeing a massive explosion in the expected card count, projecting over 5.5 yellow cards.
And this brilliantly illustrates our core point for this entire explainer. On one hand, you have the peaceful pre-World Cup friendlies where players are totally focused on injury avoidance, resulting in under 2.5 cards. But then on the right, you have the desperate win-or-go-home reality of the La Liga 2 playoffs. That extreme tension, the time wasting, the tactical fouls just to stop a counterattack, it all causes an absolute avalanche of yellow cards.
Over 5.5 yellow cards. It's the highest card projection on our slate today by a massive margin. This number totally cements our thesis. Playoff tension actually manifests physically right there on the stat sheet. The referee is going to be incredibly busy because these players have absolutely everything to lose.
So, what does this all mean? The crucial point to take away from all this data is that you can literally never look at stats in a vacuum. Context changes everything. The stakes dictate the stats. From those cautious little friendlies to the brutal La Liga 2 playoffs, the human element of football entirely shapes the numbers we see. Keep that in your back pocket as you watch today's matches. With all this tension in the air, which underdog are you putting your money on today to totally upset the data? Thanks so much for learning with me, and I'll catch you guys in the next explainer.